For almost 50 years, Christians have been told that who you support for president will either save or sacrifice the lives of unborn babies. This has led a lot of pro-life Christians to become single-issue voters, willing to overlook everything else about a candidate as long as they're against abortion. When a candidate's bad character or unchristian policies are brought up, the response is often, yeah, but abortion. The argument looks something like this. My vote determines the president nominates justices to the Supreme Court can overturn Roe v. Wade, and overturning Roe will make abortion illegal and save babies. Let's unpack what's wrong with this argument and why your vote for president might not impact abortion the way you think. So what have we learned? We've learned that despite 11 conservative, Republican-appointed justices on the Supreme Court, for the last 50 years the court has only upheld rather than reversed abortion rights, and that's unlikely to change. And even if the court did overturn Roe, it would have very little impact because abortion was widely available before Roe, and it would be after. We've also seen that the president and his party have had no impact on abortion as the rate has steadily fallen under both Republican and Democratic administrations due to local and state efforts that have nothing to do with Washington. Finally, we've learned that there are things to be encouraged about too. Abortion rates have fallen dramatically, and they're still going down. And according to a 2020 Notre Dame study, 75% of Americans say abortion should be illegal or only legal under certain circumstances. In other words, there is wide support for common sense limits on abortion. Even more importantly, the Notre Dame study found that most women, including most pro-choice women, do not want an abortion. That may explain why local and state efforts to reduce abortions are so effective. Better adoption laws, waiting periods, crisis pregnancy centers, churches, and support groups who are actually on the ground helping women and walking with them through their pregnancies, that's what's making a difference. Regarding the importance of local engagement, David French says this: if you're pro-life, the encouraging reality is those things that matter most, your relationships and your local political community, are the things over which you have the most influence. The things that matter the least, the presidency and national politics, are those things most removed from your daily life. But I've been around the pro-life movement enough to know that we often get this exactly backwards. We're most passionate about the president, yet too many of us are less interested in the crisis pregnancy center down the street. And after researching the ineffectiveness of the president and Supreme Court, a professor of Catholic studies at DePaul University said this, quote, "The one strategy for reducing abortions that has been proven to work runs through love, not power. Support for women who may not feel able to carry a pregnancy to term. This requires not blind allegiance to a political party, but the promotion of a culture of life." End quote. There may be good reasons to vote for a Republican candidate for president, but overturning Roe or thinking the president will reduce abortions isn't one of them. Likewise, there are things about the Democratic Party platform I still strongly disagree with, including abortion, but the data clearly shows that voting a Democrat into the White House does not increase abortions. If we really care about solving this problem, then we need to stop being manipulated by parties and candidates and get our focus off the presidential election. Instead, we should focus on what's happening right in front of us, in our states, our communities, and in our neighborhoods. And whether abortion is legal or not, there will always be women who need our help. That means the ultimate answer is going to require compassion and not the Supreme Court. So if you think which lever you pull in the voting booth every 4 years is what makes you pro-life, it might be time to think again.
Hey, Tim Frisch with A Frisch Perspective here. That was a portion of a video by Phil Vischer's podcast co-host Skye Jethani. And the video from October 17th is called "What About Abortion? Should This One Issue Determine How Christians Vote?" So in that video, Skye is making the argument that who we vote for president isn't necessarily the biggest factor in dealing with the abortion issue in this country. If you watch the full video, and I will leave a link in the description below this video if you'd like to watch the full thing, he talks about 3 assumptions that people make in regard to how we vote on the abortion issue. And he talks about the Supreme Court and whether Republicans in the Supreme Court have really actually made a difference. He talks about overturning Roe versus Wade and the effect that that would really have, and also what it was like before Roe versus Wade in this country. And then he talks about Republican versus Democratic policies and the actual effects that they have on the abortion issue. So I showed that video, a little bit of that, just so you could see the perspective of people who are pro-life and might be voting Democrat for president, just to give you a little bit of their perspective. But of course, there's another side to this, and people who feel very strongly the other way, such as Jenna Ellis, who in a tweet said, "Yes, all of this, you cannot logically be pro-life and vote for Harris Biden." And then she has this picture here that says pro-life evangelicals for Biden totally crossed out. And a link to an article, which I'll show you here, that says, "I've had it with these pro-life evangelicals for Biden. You can't be pro-life and pro-Biden." So this is really the exact opposite stance of what Skye Jethani was talking about in his video. This is clearly saying that if you're going to be pro-life, you have to vote Republican. The article says, "Let's get one thing straight. Abortion is the intentional taking of a human life, whether by scalpel or chemical abortifacient. Abortion ends the life of a human being. A child with his own fingerprints, heartbeat, brainwaves, and DNA. A child who can feel pain beginning at 12 weeks after conception. Let's get another thing straight. You can't be pro-life and pro-Joe Biden. Some so-called evangelicals think they can have it both ways. In an op-ed at the Christian Post, Ron Sider and Richard Mouw defend a statement urging pro-life evangelicals to vote for Joe Biden. Later, the article says, this genocide is defended and even celebrated by the Democratic Party, which has become so radical on the issue of abortion that it's booted virtually every pro-life Democrat out of the party. To wit, their 2020 party platform. Every woman should be able to access high-quality reproductive health care services, including safe and legal abortion. We will restore federal funding for Planned Parenthood. Democrats oppose and will fight to overturn federal and state laws that create barriers to women's reproductive health and rights. We will repeal the Hyde Amendment and protect and codify Roe versus Wade." Don't miss that last phrase. Democrats want to codify Roe versus Wade into law, a move that would strip states of their ability to regulate abortion in any way, including insisting on basic safety standards for abortion clinics. Oh, but the abortion rate is declining, the so-called pro-life Biden apologists claim. That proves we don't need to regulate abortion. We merely need to address the root causes. Oh, really? Could it be that state abortion regulations are doing exactly what they're intended to, reducing abortions? Hasn't the pro-genocide crowd been shrieking nonstop about the lack of access to abortions? Their hysteria gives lie to the claim that Republicans have accomplished nothing in the way of curbing abortion. Root cause policies will only take you so far. You won't hear anyone arguing that we should make rape safe, legal, and rare, and instead address the root causes of sexual assault. Arguing that we can reduce abortion by making it legal lacks both cogency and seriousness. And claims that Trump isn't really pro-life? Maybe he is, and maybe he isn't deep in his heart. We can't read his mind. What we can do is look at the policies he's advanced that promote the sanctity of human life. The Susan B. Anthony list has a roundup, and here are the different accomplishments that Trump has had on the abortion issue. But don't take their word for it. Even Planned Parenthood agrees that Trump has thrown up roadblocks to abortion and put the brakes on funding the worldwide abortion industrial complex. The president doesn't have the power to ban abortion, but he can choke off their funding, thereby reducing the number of abortions. In other words, Trump's policies have saved lives. If Joe Biden becomes president, more babies will die. If your conscience won't allow you to vote for Trump, fine. Don't vote for him. I didn't in 2016. But don't try to pretend that you're voting pro-life if you pull the lever for Biden and Harris, who are committed to abortion on demand. Shame on these liberal evangelicals trying to convince all of us that voting for enthusiastically pro-abortion candidates is the best way to demonstrate that we care about the sanctity of human life. Own up to the fact that you're willing to sacrifice the bodies of tiny babies on the altar of your hatred for Trump. Well, obviously the person writing that article feels very strongly, and I could see some bias in there. We don't always know all the reasons that people vote a certain way. I understand, too, the frustration of some voters who have a problem with one-issue voting, where we look at something like abortion and we forget everything else. Is it possible that other things are really important and could actually affect people's lives and actually do tie into our Christian values? But what I do think comes out in an article like this is just how people really feel about abortion when it comes to the pro-life movement. And for me, I am 100% pro-life. And I have to say, one of the problems that I have, and I understand why people think different ways, but one of the problems I have, especially with the Democratic Party, is the way that they talk about abortion. I believe that abortion is murder. It is taking human life. And so I have a problem with people talking about it in ways that diminish the severity of the issue. Now, one of the points that Skye Jethani makes that I do agree with in some ways is the idea that we can have a great influence through love and care for people. And that point about supporting the local pregnancy center, I think, is a really good point. We have a Christian pregnancy center in our town, and that is a wonderful way to promote our pro-life values. But we also have to acknowledge that laws have a bearing on people's lives, and they do make a difference. One thing I'm really encouraged about is seeing the reduction in abortion over the years. What are all the factors that play into that? I'm not totally sure, but I would say that I think the pro-life movement is having an effect, and that really encourages my heart. But obviously, people have different opinions about how pro-life individuals can vote in this election. I would love to hear what you think about all of this in the comments below, but please try to keep those comments positive and helpful to discussion. But thank you so much for listening to this presentation and some of my thoughts from A Frisch Perspective.